Hey everyone, welcome back to another Koji update video. It's been a while since the last one of these. I'm sorry, I kind of fell behind. It's been about 3 months, so as you can guess, a lot has changed. There are three main things that I'd like to cover and go over in this video though. The first one is asset registration and micro-licensing. The second one is a feature we call Campaigns, which is sort of pay-for-performance influencer marketing. And the third is the introduction of mobile-first instant remixing, which is something I'm crazy excited about. So first things first, the site looks completely different. We split apart templates and remixes to make it easier to discover templates and make it more kind of obvious where you get started if you're showing up here for the first time, what the kind of entry points are. There's also this giant left nav now, which is kind of the opposite of what it was before, of this simple compact thing. It's a lot, but I think it does a good job of showing the full surface area of this thing and exposing everything. And as we continue to move forward, we'll obviously start to package it back down into things that are a bit more bite-sized and easy to understand. But for right now, you kind of get to see this giant vomit of product here. And then, playing with kind of some of the messaging, how we talk about what this thing is, these things being interactive posts that are designed to be ephemeral and oftentimes short-lived and are designed to, today, ride on top of other social networks. So remixes are still remixes. You can go browse and see what other people are creating and play some of these things. The quality of some of the apps has gotten a lot better. So that's been cool to see. It's gotten a lot more interesting, the types of content people are creating. And there's a lot of cool work being done in the community to create bridges and scaffolds that leverage kind of more meaty technologies, game engines like Unity or Construct or Godot, that people can now create in those giant third-party tools and do the heavy lifting there, and then bring their finished product into Koji to make it remixable by everyone else. So that's cool. Check out Discord if you want to get involved in some of that stuff, or you can search. I think there's a Unity scaffold here that will let you get started creating a bridge between Unity and Koji. So expect to see some more work being done in this area as the community continues to play here and we continue to build out tools that help support this stuff. You'll also see that templates have a lot more detail on them now, so you can see some kind of stats and comments and all of this stuff. Two things to point out here. One, this view source code down at the bottom lets you actually view a mirror of the Git repository. So this is kind of the GitHub version of browsing one of these things if you want to poke around some of the code without necessarily going in and remixing it and doing all of that. That's cool. Thinking about adding support for pull requests into this. They could be done now. They just need to be done via the command line, which is kind of clunky for most people. But for two reasons. One, I think it would help let the community curate and maintain some of these scaffolds. Like we looked at that Unity scaffold, even just for other web technologies, to create kind of one canonical template and let the community update that and keep it current. Versus what it is today, where it's kind of fragmented and hard to really find an entry point if you're looking to jump off with a specific set of technologies. The other thing that I think is valuable, which ties into some of this instant remixing stuff that we'll talk about later, is that letting some of the less technical members of the community make changes upstream to templates has the potential to be super valuable when it comes to things like structure and organization of VCCs. So like I've even noticed this myself, like I've remixed things and been like, okay, wow, this is super cool, but the VCCs are a little confusing. Like it would be better if kind of this were surfaced over here and this was rearranged in this way and maybe this was called something else. So letting people in the community go in and kind of determine what the best VCCs are for a specific template is, I think, a cool mode of collaboration that benefits makers as a whole. So that could be coming sometime in the future. Don't quote me on that, but something that's been in the back of my mind. The other cool thing on templates hidden down at the bottom here is this view assets button. So this takes us into asset registration and the licensing stuff. Basically, you can see every asset that's being used in these apps. So if I let's go to one of these remixes, and I think that'll give us a better look at it. So like you can see here, all of the assets being used inside of this game, including some of these ones that have been registered within our database and made available for licensing on a per project basis. This asset cost $4.95, and someone paid $4.95 to include this asset in their game, along with some more expensive ones, which is pretty cool, crazy. So I can see basically all of the other apps that use this asset by looking at the hash of the resource. So what this means is that if you are a graphic designer or a visual artist or someone who makes sound effects or music or if you just happen to own the license to a bunch of intellectual property, you can create one of these asset packs and then register your assets inside of our database along with per project paid licenses to let other people easily use and license your resources inside of their projects. So there's a ton of these now, which is really cool to see. If you go into one of these projects, I can click on this. This is all of the ones that conform to type image. There's all kinds of crazy stuff in here. California, Buddha, projectiles, like it's kind of unlimited the types of things that can be in here. And they're not just these kinds of asset packs, though that's the interesting thing for what we're talking about here. They can be anything that output an image. So like this one, image drawing, looks like it lets you basically paint and then output the thing that you've painted. So just to kind of clarify this, these things are just Koji apps. So this is just a Koji app that says that it outputs an image, so we show it in here, and then it gets rendered inside of this thing as an editor extension. So you can see some of these asset packs. Like if I go back to this and go to the YouTube family pack, which is what we were looking at earlier, some of these assets have prices on them. So what this means is that the hash of this resource is registered in our database, and then if I use it inside of my app, I have to pay to be able to publish that app. So in this case, it costs 10 cents to be able to use this freaky thing inside my app. And all of this is backed by the Koji wallet, which lets us transact at these tiny prices without needing to deal with processor fees. Having this broad library of high quality assets available to makers is a big lever when it comes to increasing the quality of the products that people are making and the ease with which they're able to make them, especially when they're doing this on mobile, where it's not so easy to just open a ton of tabs of Google Images and find a bunch of things and save them and whatever. That workflow is a lot more difficult on a mobile device. So having access to these curated asset packs and being able to pay, I mean, some of these are like $100, which is crazy, but being able to pay like 3 cents or 5 cents or $1 or $5 or whatever to be able to use some high quality thing in my app really easily and kind of seamlessly and frictionlessly is really compelling. So that's asset packs and licensing. I think there's a video tutorial where Luis talks about how it's actually done if you have some of these assets and you want to make them available for sale. First, you have to create the asset pack and publish it, and then you can go in and you can register the assets under this My Monetized Assets tab over here. The next big thing to talk about is a feature that we are calling campaigns. Campaigns kind of stemmed from an issue that we were having where we wanted to incentivize people to create and share apps and games to showcase the power of this thing. And it's surprisingly hard to do that. Even when you have money, it's difficult. The money is not the hard part of doing that. The hard part is actually finding the people to create these things, managing the types of things that they create, going back and forth there. And then if you want to share them, what today we call sort of influencer marketing, it's super difficult and messy and lots of people in the middle and connectors and gatekeepers and contracts and no sort of measurable performance, after the fact. So just a crazy sort of landscape. And so we basically looked at that landscape and realized that we could do a different take on it. And this is all built on top of our in-house analytics engine, which you'll notice inside of your apps. If you go to the analytics tab, you can see like time played and custom events and all sorts of other kind of simple trackable things inside of there without needing to either roll it yourself or leverage some other third-party analytics software. So the way Campaigns works is that if I am some organization with a bunch of money, I can show up here and I can create a campaign. And I specify kind of what the campaign is, what the theme is, and what type of content I want created for the campaign. And I give it a budget and I set prices for events, and then I publish the campaign. So once it's published, makers show up here and they read the requirements. And then they go ahead and they remix something and they create a game or an app that meets the requirements and submit it into the queue to be approved by the campaign owner. So the campaign owner, once they kind of get all of these, they approve things that meet the requirements, reject things that don't, and things that are approved get paid instantly to the maker's wallet, whatever the reward is for creating a game here. Once a game is approved, it goes into this pool of shareable artifacts. And then on the other side of things, other people with an audience, what today we might call influencers, show up here and choose something from this pool of games. They look through here and they find one of these things that they think is compelling, and they go over here and they get a share link to share this thing. And then they share this thing wherever they share stuff. That might be posting it on Twitter, that might be posting it in an Instagram story, it might be shouting it on their Twitch stream or sending it in Discord or blasting it to an email list, whatever. We're sort of agnostic to the platform that's actually being used to distribute this content. All we care about is how many unique people show up from this link and what do they do once they've showed up. And you can see over here that the campaign owner has specified different events that pay out different rewards based on user engagement with any of these links. Right now, this is kind of limited to time spent playing the game, but because this is built on top of our analytics engine, these could be custom events. So this could be like, right now it's 5 cents if someone shows up and plays one of these things. Every person who shows up and plays one of these things using your link, you automatically get 5 cents into your wallet from this campaigns pool. If that person stays to play for 30 seconds, you get an extra 10 cents. If this campaign integrated custom events, it might pay out 50 cents if the person finishes the game and gets on the leaderboard. It might pay out $1 if the person gets the high score on the leaderboard. Or it might track a conversion and an eventual purchase onto some other website. So really what we've got here is pay for performance influencer marketing. Today, the types of content available are mainly these games, but as Koji continues to grow and become more broad in the types of content people are creating here, some of these will be, short little interactive memes. Some of them might be crazy long games. Some of them might be puzzles. Some of them might be challenges, whatever. The point is that this campaign's product makes it easy to measure performance and engagement at an incredibly granular level. So you're not wasting money sort of paying for some famous person to shout your website and then you don't really know what happens. There are 2 additional dynamics here that make this really interesting to me. One is that the maker, the person who created this post that is then shared by the influencer, that maker gets 10% of all share revenue that comes from their post. So if I make this thing, I might get $3 for submitting this and having it approved by the campaign. But if someone comes along and picks my game to share it, and that person has a massive audience, or if everyone, because my game is the best game, the majority of influencers showing up here choose mine to share, I have the potential to make a ton of money based on their performance. So this incentivizes makers to make the most compelling and broadly appealing pieces of content that are most likely to be shared by the most people because they benefit from the success of the sharers as well. So the other interesting dynamic here has to do with the sharers, with the influencers. And because of 2 things here. One, because these things are able to pay out microtransactions via the wallet. And 2, because these things are just links. These are embedded posts that run anywhere. The question of who these influencers are is, I think, an interesting one. Obviously, they're the people that we consider today to be influencers. People with large followings on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, whatever, can definitely all participate here. But what this also opens up is an opportunity for, some people call them micro-influencers, but I think that's kind of a weird word for them. But basically just people with meaningful audiences who they actually have the ability to influence over. People who are, leaders within a certain space, be that within some weird industry, be that within some weird genre of games, or even like just some popular kid somewhere who has access to maybe 100, 200 people, but those 100, 200 people will jump over their feet to do anything this person wants them to. That's kind of a true influencer, not at the scale side of things, but from the effect side of things. And this selects for those types of people who can actually engage an audience and influence their behavior versus just people who have a massive reach and can just kind of shout out into the void and get attention. So it kind of democratizes who's able to participate in this process. So this is cool. This is available now. The first one that we're really testing, which is probably going to get some more budget thrown at it this week, is to make games educating people about COVID and coronavirus, things you should be doing to prevent the spread of the disease. And there's a ton of games in here to choose from or be inspired by to create your own. And then, lots of people already participating and sharing these links. So that's cool. Going to keep playing with that. This is in very early stages. This only came out like last week. So expect to see a lot more interesting things here. And if this is something that is interesting to you for a cause or your business or whatever, feel free to get in touch and we can help you out and figure out some way you might be able to help us test this and help build this product. The other cool sort of next step here is taking it into the crowdsourcing kind of things where other people can pool together these budgets. So like I could participate in this campaign, I could add money into this pot as an individual, and you could start to get these really cool crowdsourced advertising campaigns, which is weird to think about, but makes sense and could be super interesting. Okay, so that's campaigns. The last thing to talk about that I want to cover here is instant remixing, mobile first instant remixing. So I just pushed this yesterday. It's super early beta. Let's see if I can find the tab. So on the one hand, as I was saying earlier, the types of things people are creating on Koji are getting more interesting, more advanced, and more compelling. So there's, games that are built in Unity and are remixable in Koji, games that are built in Play Canvas and remixable in Koji, big third-party game engines that do a lot of big, crazy 3D stuff, like real proper game engines being thrown in here, which is really cool. It's super powerful, and I think does a really good job of illustrating what we've kind of been saying as we've been building this, which is that Koji is a tool for remixing. It's a remixing engine. It's not opinionated as to the types of content that are on it or what that content looks like or feels like. It doesn't care. It's just a tool for taking something and remixing it and turning it into something else, and then turning that thing into more things and letting things spread in that way. On the other hand, because it is such a fundamental and general platform, there's value in pushing in the other direction, which is to say, okay, we've got this crazy high quality things going on over here. What's kind of the complete opposite of that? What are these like super lightweight, lo-fi is not the right word, but kind of hyper casual things that may not even be interactive, or they may only be interactive in some tiny way, but they're patterns that can be remixed and republished and shared in the same way as some of these higher quality crazy things. So with that in mind, we've released this ability for instant remixing of apps that don't require compile steps or dynamic deploys. So things that don't have backends and things that don't need a running process in order to work in development and build themselves. So, most of the simple web games on here can be converted to support this. They don't today because it's so new, but I think we'll start to see that happen shortly. Basically, the way it works is that apps integrate the instant remixing class from the Koji VCC SDK. So all the way down at the bottom here in the README, you can find this. You have to have the latest version of the Koji VCC SDK installed. I think it's 1.1.6. And then you can set this up. It has a getter that you need to use instead of accessing values directly on the config object, and then a listener to understand when things are changed. So once you integrate this, all you have to do is add an entitlements file into your project directory so that we know that this capability is supported by the app, and then publish it. And what you'll get, if you've done it correctly, is that when I click this button here, the remix button, I have two options. I have the option to fork the template, which is, a standard Koji remix. And I also have the option to create this instant remix. And if I select this, I get a menu here at the bottom with the quick start VCCs. In this case, there are only two of them. One is to change the photo, the other is to change the frame around the photo. So I can select this and I get the standard VCC editor, and I can choose a different frame here from this thing. And then I can click over here and I can publish it. And now I've got a new one of these and I can share this on any of these. So that is sort of mind-blowing. It kind of takes a bit of processing if you're used to understanding these things as like, okay, it's going to clone this repository, start this development environment, I have to wait for this progress bar to load, and then I get this big ID, I make my changes, and then I hit publish, and then it commits and pushes and triggers a build and does all that to see kind of the same effect happen instantly like this. It's really cool and really exciting. Obviously, this is just the beginning. There's a ton of tuning to go on here, and as we continue to build this out and make these VCCs especially more mobile friendly, I think this thing is going to start to get really cool and really powerful. So the other interesting thing here is that if I create the instant remix, I don't need to be signed in to do this. I don't need to have an account. I can just show up here and I can make one of these. I do need to have an account if I want to use, say, a premium asset in here. And if I want to, for whatever reason, make this monster of a thing, when I go to publish, I'll have to purchase it, and I can purchase that asset, and then it'll post it, and then I get my thing. So if you look at the structure of the URL here, it'll give you a bit of a hint as to how this is actually working under the hood. So the URL is just the same URL as my base app, the thing that I published that using the real Koji editor that's deployed to a domain and has all kinds of provisioning and all that stuff associated with it. Plus an ID that references the set of mutations that I've made on top of that. So in this case, I swapped out that frame with this picture, and that's stored in the database and reference from this ID. So you get the original app plus the mutations, and that's how you get an instant remix. This is exciting because I think it's something that we're going to keep pushing the limits of what it can do, what's possible in here. I think many of the things that you can do today in the normal editor are going to be capable of being done in this instant remix mode. It's also really cool to be able to make these things super quickly. It makes them a lot more conversational, more kind of easily composable, and require less thinking, more like tweets and GIFs than like games and apps. So one of the cool modes of using this is I found in the one day that it's been out has been inside of Messenger apps. So like if you send one of these to someone in, say, Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or whatever, they can open it, be like, haha, that's super weird, and then make their own remix inside of the web view, inside of Messenger, create it, change the thing, publish it, copy the link, and send it to you, and send it right back to you. So you can kind of get this meme-like communication and creation inside of these things. I'll share in the description of this video the link to this template that supports this, so you can play around with making your own instant remixes and also clone this template and actually see how you go about integrating this into the apps that you're creating. It's really not difficult. It's just, you know, changing this import around and making sure that you can properly respond to changes that come over the wire from the instant remixer. Yeah, so again, sorry for the quarter-long delay in these videos. I hope to get back into a more regular cadence, just because this one is, I'm sure, already getting super long, and I actually had to like make notes to remember everything that's changed, and I'm sure I've forgotten a ton of stuff. So expect more regular videos. As always, feedback is super appreciated. Jump in our Discord. You can message me in there directly or post. We've got like channels for suggestions and bug reports and all of that. If you are interested in using any of these features that I talked about for your business or your organization, if you're, you know, a personality or an artist or whatever, and you want to create these asset packs and start making money by monetizing them, there are tutorials and resources in the description of the video that will help you do that. If you want to play around with creating a campaign and using that as kind of the next generation of advertising, feel free to get in touch and talk to us. We're happy to help you set that up and even, you know, help you throw some budget behind it if you need that, just because we want to start testing this thing more broadly. If you want to work with us, we are hiring, so feel free to get in touch about that. Yeah, and hope everyone is staying safe and doing well, and I will see you soon.